So before we jump into things as a group, I think it's important for us to kind of connect on a personal level before we do that. So I want us to think about and then respond. You can either respond just speaking with the video feature, or you can use the chat about what is one thing that you are secretly pleased about not having to do now that we are social distancing.
I can start.
Sure.
I love not having to do state testing.
No testing.
I'm just glad I don't have to go to after-school staff meetings. Very happy.
I feel bad about this one, but I was feeling right before all schools closed, I was feeling this major pressure to get my kids signed up for like all these extracurriculars and summer. And I was like, they need to be in this. And I'm being a bad parent for not signing them up. And now everything's closed. So I don't feel that pressure anymore. And I feel really guilty about that because I know I should want them to be in all those things, but also just the scheduling stuff stresses me out. So,
I'm enjoying not having to drive around as much, rushing with 4 kids and a full-time job. You can kind of imagine what that looks like sometimes. So just having things be at a little slower pace.
Mom. I'm appreciating not having to wake up quite as early. I usually wake up 1 to 2 hours earlier than what I've been waking up. So that's been nice.
It's been nice for me to be able to eat breakfast in my home rather than eating breakfast in the car or at my desk or in as few bites as possible. So it's been nice to have a little bit, like most of you, like a lot of you have said, just having a little bit more of a leisure time.
I was going to say the same one about not waking up as early. Just even an hour or 2 is such a difference.
Mm-hmm. Totally. So it sounds like we're all enjoying a little bit of extra sleep, hopefully, and feeling some relieved pressures with little and big things in our lives, having to not run around. I know in the group we were with yesterday, traffic was a big thing. It's like I don't have to sit in traffic and worry about that anymore. So that's good that there are some small silver linings in the situation that we're in that we're able to enjoy. So we're gonna take a look at, like I mentioned, a couple examples of ways that in-home learning could look for highly capable students. It's not the way, just a way to do that. But before we do that, I wanna make sure that we have an opportunity just to review the norms for our space, since Zoom meeting norms kind of differ depending on who's facilitating. So I'll let you take a minute to take a look at those. And if those look agreeable to you, if you could just show me with a thumbs up on your screen. If there's any questions or things that we need to add, we can also address those. I'm seeing thumbs up, so it looks like those norms look agreeable to everybody. So the first example we're going to take a look at is with literacy. And so just thinking about how we can provide small snippets of learning opportunities for students and meeting them where they are with their skills. So this example pulls off of, and each of the examples that you'll see today, tried to pull off the enduring concepts that are on each of the Canvas content pages, and being able to use those as a guide about like where do we start and what should we be teaching or providing for students. I know there was some conversation yesterday about like there was this confusion behind when new learning is supposed to happen and when we're just providing review. So this is providing some guidance to get to that. And then I chose to go to a resource with Jennifer Saravallo's reading strategies book to be able to use that as a place to start with some small skills-based learning that we can provide for students. You don't have to go to Sarah Bell's book. You could use Unit's work as well or another resource. So this is just a place to start. So this mini lesson that you're going to watch on this next slide is focusing around the skill of determining main idea. And so I'm going to play the video for you. And as you're watching, just paying attention to what you notice about it. If you have questions or things that you wanted to mention that align with what you're doing already. Something to know about when I put this together, I chose Google Slides purposefully so I could embed a Screencastify video in it. And so we can talk about Screencastify features and stuff like that too as a part of this conversation if that feels meaningful as well. So I'll go ahead and play the video. Candace, did you have anything else you wanted to add before we did that?
No, but I'm after the mini lesson, I'll chime in.
Okay.
Morning, everyone, and welcome back. Earlier this year, we learned about main idea and supporting details, and we're going to continue practicing skills related to these ideas with our independent reading books this week. When I read, I often pause, saying the main idea and linking it to related points. Then I can select points that are especially important to those ideas. Today, I want to teach you that readers determine the main idea or ideas of a text by pausing, jotting, and thinking, so what's this text mostly about? While I've been reading at home, I've been interested in learning more about different kinds of animals. I've been most interested lately about learning about squirrels because I've seen a lot of them around my neighborhood. I want you to learn more about squirrels with me today. Before I start reading this text, I notice that it is organized into paragraphs. So I think I'm going to use those to help me know when to pause and think. Let's read the first paragraph. The squirrel is highly adaptable, so its home depends on its location. Red squirrels prefer temperate to polar forest regions. They like forests with tall pine trees, but they are also found in deciduous forests, and they seek out areas with mushrooms for foraging. Some make their homes in urban areas as long as there are enough trees and food sources. Okay, so what is this part mostly about? After reading, I think this part is mostly about how squirrels can live in different kinds of forests or places. Let's read on. The eastern gray squirrel also prefers forested areas for its habitat. This species likes forests with a mix of trees such as oak, walnut, and pine. These trees produce long-lasting foods such as nuts for winter feeding. They also form a continuous forest canopy. What is this part mostly about? This part is mostly about the eastern gray squirrel and how it lives in forests to get food. I'm going to jot that down. Eastern gray, fox, and red squirrels are all tree squirrels. Tree squirrels are mainly arboreal. They spend most of their time high up in the forest canopy. Traveling and foraging in trees protects them from some predators. A forest provides multiple escape routes from danger. This paragraph is about how many squirrels live high in trees to stay safe. These squirrels use trees for their homes. They build nests, but they also build and use natural dens such as tree holes. These places are well made and are built to be hidden, so they are useful for protecting very young squirrels. This part is about how many squirrels use or build in trees to keep their family safe. Now that I've paused and jotted with these different chunks, it's time to put them all together. I'm going to look at all the jots I wrote down and think, so what is this text mostly about? Each part was either about how squirrels live in different forests or places, the food that they eat, and how they stay safe. So if I put all these ideas together, I would say that the text is mostly about how squirrels live in different forests and places to get food and stay safe. See how I paused, jotted, and asked myself, what is this text mostly about? As you read your independent reading books this week, remember that good readers determine the main idea or ideas of a text by pausing, jotting, and thinking, so what is this text mostly about? Also be ready to share some of your jots during our conference this week. See you soon.
Any thoughts, reaction, how it aligns to what you're already providing, what you're thinking about how it might be used with some of your students, HiCap, or students that have similar areas of strength?
I need to stop. We've been using Screencastify a lot, so yeah, I mean, I like the way that you can have a mini lesson and then have them continue on with whatever you've been teaching.
And it was pretty succinct, like it didn't go on and on about or belabor a certain point, and there were visuals of the dots. I thought that was nice to help the listener understand.
Candace, did you want to add anything here?
One thing that Kelly and I have talked a lot about, and I've been thinking a lot about, is the lessons that you guys are required to do each week, and thinking about how you can get the most bang for your buck out of those, and thinking about things that could be extended for week long, and giving a few options that students are doing throughout the week, so that you're not feeling like you're having to do separate lessons every time. And I know some people are already doing things like that, which is awesome. And so one thing that Kelly and I had talked about was how you could take something like this, like instead of assuming like we would take one of those lessons from reading and writing strategies and that would be the lesson for the day, making that what they might do over a week, that they're continuing, because ultimately we want them coming back to it. And it's not realistic that they're going to do ELA every day, or that they're going to read necessarily every day. So how are we being realistic for parents too? And so that was something that we were kind of trying to reframe our thinking around, is how could you take some of these lessons in Cerevala, which have some cool visuals that you could recreate or just show, and turn it into something longer. So I think Kelly has an example here of what that might look like.
So again, it's not the way, but a way to do things. So I'm thinking about the mini lesson that was just modeled, and thinking about how students might be able to practice that skill across the week, because there's kind of steps in applying that skill already, to think about how I didn't put any, I went back and forth last night. I was like putting some of this together, like to give it like day amounts, and it didn't feel appropriate, because it could be just like, depending on how kids are pacing it, like to try and say like, this is one part, a second part, or a third part, or a step 1 or step 2, step 3, rather than like saying day 1, day 2, but that kids could stop, practice stopping and jotting with either something that's provided or something that they're using. And then another layer to that is thinking about how they can think about how the text is organized to help them do that. And then kind of a final layer to think about how they can look back over their jots of a couple pages, and then putting them all together would be a way that you can work on it over the course of a week. There might be other ways that it could be stretched out too. I don't know, Candace, if you have different ideas about how that might look.
Not necessarily. I just think the idea of sort of thinking about what we're putting out there for families, and how we're taking that burden off of ourselves to have to do a lesson. While what I like about going to the enduring concepts and then looking at reading strategies, or pulling even a question from units, is it still feels on track, instead of like having to feel like we're coming up with this stuff on our own, or providing just another resource for families. It's all can be in one place. And we know that it's aligned with what we want kids to be learning. And I know that the enduring concepts can feel a little heavy, but also like that's what we're going to be using to determine what happens in the fall. Like we're going to assume that students have gotten some of this work, the standards that were pulled from the enduring concepts piece. And so it just helps as many people as we can have referring to that. I think that helps just make sure our students aren't getting completely different experiences.
Yeah, Jackie.
I'm even thinking for next year when we go back, how good this would be. I don't know any of you others, that now that we've switched to incorporating the HiCap within the classroom, I don't know about you guys, for us, it's been hellacious, because I have kids that can barely read along with my HiCap kids. So I'm literally doing like 3 lessons a day. And I'm trying to do different math groups, and it's having to go beyond just the normal what you do with Bridges or with Calkins, where you just pull out a group. It's just going beyond that. And I think this could be really good with you can have some text on here with a low group where it can walk them step by step, or it could even go with a higher text with the high group if you don't have time to meet with a group for the day. I could even see it with kids that are absent, sending, you know, having kids watch it, or if they need to go back, or showing parents what they're doing, and they could have, if they're struggling, have parents look at this. So there's a lot of different things I think this would be helpful with, that I really struggled with this year because I was juggling a lot. And I don't know how it works with some of the other schools, if you guys struggled with this year, because I was thinking of even asking to get out of HiCap because it was just too much with how they have it set up with the huge variety of kids they have in there. It was so hard meeting everyone's needs. I felt like I worked so hard that I wasn't meeting anyone's needs. And it was really a struggle. But I think that I might be able to manage it if I could do some things on here. But then this would be a management because you need to create it every time. So.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, there's a lot of things you just spoke to, Jackie, but I think one of them was that we can take some of the things that we're learning now to help maybe pull groups or do some more independent type work as we come back that's prepared in advance. But of course, then the preparing it in advance takes that time. So that can definitely be something too that we might want to bring up. I know some of you are in those work groups that will be talking about what happens in the fall. But that might be something interesting to bring up. And I know that conversation will come up about like, how do we bring that learning in without having this extra burden and all the classroom management stuff. The second thing I just wanted to address that you mentioned is just the groups, like how you're doing HiCap, and then you have all these groups that were low and or all over the place in the classroom. And so just know that one of the things that we have tried and are trying to do, knowing that strength-based student grouping was new this current school year, is that we've sent groupings to schools. We've recommended, like, this is how you should group the students, which we sort of said last year, like, we can help you with it, but only 2, I think, principals took Kelly up on that last year. And so this year, instead, we've changed our tactic and we've said, like, this is how we would group them by strength. And then also that offer to have a conversation about who else is in that classroom or who's teaching those classes to help guide. And so, Jackie, I will be having conversations with Tamara. She is one that we've been openly talking about it. So I'm hoping that can be on our list as well. But I know that that's something that you guys have all struggled with this year. And if you have any brilliant solutions, please let us know, because we've been trying to work through that also.
So again, this is one way that, and thanks Jackie for highlighting the different ways that it can be applied when and if we return in the fall, and just thinking about how the innovations that we put in place now can bleed over to that. And it's not when we go back that we don't forget everything that we learned in this time. I know there are like places for me that I just want to like erase from my mind of things that have happened. But hopefully there's some things that can stick and we can take with us too. So this is one way things could be stretched out over the course of a week from just one mini lesson that you might teach with a skill. And so the next, thinking about if kids are stopping and jotting and think about what's this text mostly about, a next step might be like for that next week, you might have them consider structure of text and how that might lend itself to thinking about main idea. There's a lot of different routes you could go depending on where kids are at skills-wise, but this might be one way that you could do a next step. You might also have them be able to go and do some writing about reading that has them working with some main idea and taking the jots and putting them together to have a new idea out of it. So there's lots of different ways that you could go through that. Any other final thoughts or wonderings about the literacy example?
Really quickly, what book was that you're referencing?
So I use Jennifer Saravallo's reading strategies.
Thank you.
Yeah, but you could easily, thanks, Vanna.
I use these to hold up my computer during the day, so they're always accessible.
That's the cover I recognize. Thank you.
And I think too, you could easily pull things from units also. And the text that I pulled to use as a part of Screencastify, it came from Epic Books. But there's a lot of open source stuff right now. So I was just trying, if you don't have text just laying around your house, there are some places we can point you to that you might be able to pull from. So with that, we're going to move into kind of the second. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Julia.
Sorry, had to
That's
unmute
okay. You
real
don't have to
quick.
apologize. I need to look up.
I was wondering, so I was thinking of Screencastify as being something that you videotaped yourself with.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of people do just audio with something called Audacity. So were you using Screencastify there for your audio as well?
Yes. So I did use Screencastify, and that I can show you, I'll stop this share for a second and show you. So I've loaded Screencastify into on my computer as an add-in to Google. So it'll have this icon up here in my web browser. And so when I click on it,
yeah, I uploaded it too. I just
so it
haven't really
has these
played with it
options
yet.
of what you can use. And so right now I have it set to where I would embed a web camera. So it's like a picture-in-picture where the audience that I am recording for could see my face.
Right.
But I can also click off of that and it'll just allow me to record.
Just your voice.
Just the voice. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
So you can do either of those.
That seems a lot easier than Audacity.
Yeah, I'm not experienced with Audacity, but
It's part of Google too. But
okay.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have a quick jotting.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody, just in case anybody knows or has ideas, I feel like I'm trying to find a way for students to stop and jot. That's still meaningful when they're reading text online. Does anybody know if any of the platforms they've used like have ways they could, like that video showed, like kind of type a little note? Or, I mean, obviously they can do it with a notebook or paper at home, but I just didn't know if anybody knew of a cool program that allowed that.
So I mean, not one in the moment, but
Okay.
on Newsella, they can annotate and make comments on articles that you can see. So like if you assign them that article, you can see all their annotations and highlights.
Oh, that's cool.
Like that. So that's the only one that I know of that would work that way, but I'm sure that there's many more.
No, thank you. I hadn't thought of that one.
So this next piece we're going to take a look at, I also put together an example in math and an example in science about what in-home learning could look like using some of the resources that are already available to us and trying to have some kind of interaction and embedding some stuff with Screencastify. So we're going to use the breakout room feature in Zoom to be able to do that. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with the breakout room setup with Zoom. Thumbs up if you know what that is. Okay, so if you're just making sure that if you haven't set it up on your computer, that you go into your Zoom account at zoom.com and you have to select it on your settings to be able to select the breakout rooms. I can walk us through that now if you need to. If we don't need to.
So you're not just going to send us to the rooms?
So I will send you to rooms. Oh, what I was going to say is, does anybody want me to walk through how you would put that together in your settings?
Yes, please.
You mean saying yes. Okay. So if you go to, let me get back to my browser. Okay. Thanks for your patience. So if I go to Zoom using my web browser and I log in, if I go to the settings on the left, you have to scroll quite a while down the page. And then there's this breakout room option. So you just need to click to turn it on. And I also click to allow the person that's hosting to assign the breakout rooms, because you can either have Zoom randomly place people in breakout rooms, or you can be more intentional and put certain participants in each breakout room. So as long as it's turned on, that's the important part. And then down at the bottom, once you turn that feature on, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, when you turn it on, when you're hosting, you'll see a breakout rooms icon. And it has like 4 squares in the bottom. And then you can click on that, which I'm gonna do now. And you can select to either automatically or manually set up the rooms and choose the number of rooms that you wanna put together. So for any questions about that?
Oh, I was just going to say real quick, can you monitor as the host what kids are doing while, you know, they're not going to some random spot you can't monitor, are they?
Right, so you can join the breakout rooms when they're in session, so you could choose to join that. And so once you get into the room, when you get people sent to the rooms, you have the opportunity to join those rooms once they're set up. And I can send it to you afterward, but there's a menu that pops up on your screen that shows you who's in which breakout rooms. And there's a place on that same screen to click join room, and you would join that room. And then you just become a member of that until you exit it.
How does
but Jackie, you can't monitor, oh, sorry, Ellie, you can't monitor them all at the same time.
Right.
So you're jumping from room to room, so there would be unsupervised time. So one thing I've seen teachers do is like combine classes or even like split classes and have like team teachers monitor rooms, or like both Kelly and I have offered to monitor rooms. I've monitored a 6th grade breakout room just to make sure there was a body in that room. But I did look, because this question came up yesterday, it does look like when it records the Zoom meeting, if you do breakout rooms, it records those also.
Oh, good.
So that's
because I'm
good.
thinking we could still even do reading buddies next year if it continues. So I'm thinking that would be good.
Yeah, a lot of teachers are using them for book clubs right now, which is kind of cool.
Yes. Ellie, did you have another question?
No, Candace answered it. It was just about recording.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and split us up into a couple rooms. And then there's also a feature with the breakout rooms where you can broadcast a message to the room. So you may see a message pop up that says, hey, we have 5 more minutes to work. So look for those from me. I will, once you get into the breakout rooms, I'll join your room and put in the links to the 2 examples, both in math and science. And then with the people in that room with you, you can explore those activities, and we'll come back together to be able to debrief about what we noticed and questions that we had. Any clarifying questions before we do that? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and create rooms. So you'll get a little message will pop up on your screen that you're going to a room, and I'll go in and put in those links for you. See ya.
Too, and Kelly, you can share this with the other rooms, but you can do it in the moment. Like if you have a small group, you can assign people to certain rooms, or you can plan them in advance. So you're not trying to like do it, like think about what you would do, especially with the whole class beforehand, which is cool.
And when you
go ahead, there's your 2 links.
Okay, and when you do that, Kelly, when you put it in the chat, that goes to all the rooms?
It goes to just this room.
Oh, okay. And then you have to go into the other room.
Yeah, and something that Candace taught me is that you can't be in the main session before you go in the breakout rooms and share it in the chat, because it won't cross over to the breakout room. So you
right, I've had that.
Individually go
into
the breakout rooms and drop it in.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Understandable.
Kelly, I don't think we can hear you.
You are right. Thank you for reminding me that I'm muted.
When you have
I'll drop the
kids,
links in for you.
it's
Yeah.
you're constantly going back and forth between being muted and unmuted. So I can relate. I never want to just leave myself where everyone can hear what's going on, because I never know, like, when somebody's gonna come in and get ice out of the fridge or ask me a question.
Right. Yes, my kids are upstairs now, so it's a little quieter. Thank you for your patience and understanding.
Oh, they're so cute.
So there's the
Makes me
two
so
links to those two examples. So go ahead and take some time to explore them together, and we'll pull back together. I'll send a broadcast about when to come back in just a minute.
Video or not. Want me to keep playing or go back to the rest of the slides?
Maybe we can go back to the rest of the slides just so we don't run out of time.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, I like the idea a lot of U cubed. I think it's got some really cool stuff for kids.
Definitely.
One of the hopes with the activity is that it could be something that's explored over the course of a week. It doesn't have to even be a day, and that there are different levels of complexity that could be added as kids are having to convince at different levels, or using some of those mathematical practices of really like developing some skills that are longevity wise going to be things they need as mathematicians. Another goal is to try and have something that's accessible to kids and they don't have to have a lot of materials to do something with. So hoping that there's some kind of piece of paper that we can make into a square, and they could either work on it independently, and if and when a sibling or a parent is around, they can show them what they're thinking, or to be able to check in with all of you to say, like, this is what I was working on and what I found.
Cool. Do you guys want me to switch to the science one? Ready for that? Or
Is that the end of the math one?
or
I
make you
think
of
I looked
something
at the
else?
math one more. I think it was cool. The activity was cool. Like a student had to justify their thinking to a partner about a few different scenarios. Yeah, I think it seemed really cool. It made me think, for next year, I don't really quite have that set up. I mean, I could set up a small group, but I don't quite have that set up with my class where we have like live sessions besides a morning meeting session. But it made me think about, the power of them being able to talk to each other, which they're not really getting as much of right now.
Yeah. What you made me think of when you were just talking is like, that's super important to bring up in those work groups, like as a recommendation to teachers, like how do we set up like a go-to group for students? Like this is your small group, this is your partner. So
Yeah.
there's like, how are we building that for kids?
The
Because
structures of it.
well, that's what the kids miss, right? Is talking to each other.
Totally.
So I'm glad that you said that, because that.
And how can we, I feel like we've worked out scheduling kinks for like 10 weeks, and now we're kind of in a place where I can like assume and get kids to a certain platform at a certain time. But how can we help families like from the beginning of the year, like set up for, because they weren't really set up for this type of learning. Like how can we help them set up for this type of learning? Like build a flexible schedule, or we don't want, every family's different, so it's going to be hard finding the balance between having an assigned time and allowing flexibility. But maybe there's a few times per week that your student's expected to be on, and then the other time is more like flex. How can we help them managing different, like multiple kids on a device? Like all of that, I feel like is we've worked through it slowly, but if it was like a little more intentional going into next year, I think we could have a better setup.
Yeah, for sure. Are you in one of the work groups, Ellie?
What?
Are you in one of the work groups?
No.
I think I saw your name. Are you, Jackie?
No.
No? Okay. Well, Kelly and I are, so we will bring.
Okay. Yeah, you can bring that back.
to random work groups. So, so we will bring your thinking.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Jackie, what did you think about the examples?
Can I go back really quick to the small group thing? And as we've gone along, I've adjusted my meeting time with students like 3 different times to accommodate almost everyone. And as talking to parents, because we have to contact them every week, I found that Wednesday at noon works the best. I have the most of my kids, my ELL kids, that seems to be like the best day for them. And the 1 or 2 kids that can't come on that day, they're my go-getters that seem to be able to sometimes come, and then they're off and can do what they can do. They'll do things. So I'm getting the most access to kids on those days. So I think surveys and things like that, to see when you can access most kids is going to be best. I'm even finding now that I'm getting my act together, I was able to, I didn't even know how to upload a video. So we had 2 of our teachers doing most of they were doing videos. I am now doing videos. And so I can't believe I can even do that. And I was even doing some live teaching with my HiCap kids, so I can get them to do.
Welcome back.
Hi.
So thanks for testing out and participating in the breakout rooms. So we just want to take an opportunity to kind of bring it back all together and talk about any noticings or wonderings that you had with the examples that you saw, things that you might want to share out to the larger group. And then before we close today as well, to think about next session and what feels top of mind or might be a springboard from here that would be helpful for you and all the efforts that you're putting forward within home learning.
Jackie and Ellie had some really good ideas around groups, especially as we think about next year. Ellie or Jackie, I don't know if you want to share any of that, thinking about like increasing student talk.
Well, I was just reflecting that that activity in comparison to what we've been doing on websites require students to talk and like have a partnership more than we've been exploring that idea. And that's a direction I'd want to move into next year, because I feel like that's something students are losing a lot, that ability to engage in rich discussions and share their thinking and justify their thinking. So setting up structures for next year that allow that to happen frequently would be important.
Yeah, we talked about having like set up small groups and partnerships, and thinking about too, how do we build partnerships for kids that also build some sense of trust, knowing that we're asking them to, like they might be being like seeing the insides of people's homes or being, you know, I mean, different things. I think we really need to be intentional about what we're doing next year. I mean, hopefully we'll be in schools, but probably not. And how we're grouping kids too, so that it's like, we don't have to figure it out every time. Like this is their small group, this is their partnership, and they know how to communicate with each other because we've set that up. I think that's really smart for us to think about for next year.
Anything else that you noticed, questions you have about the examples that were provided?
Do we have access to those when we're done here?
Yeah, so my hope is to send a follow-up email to all groups to have the recording available and also a copy of the presentation that has the examples in it as well. So you should have access to that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And the hope was in all those activities to have something that was skills or questioning or something based that you could work on over the course of a week and that kids could dig into in somewhat of a self-paced way. And for example, with the math piece of it, trying to find things that don't require a lot of materials. For myself and working with my son, there's just a lot of like printed materials that I'm feeling like, thank goodness I have a printer that I can print them off of, but I don't always want to print them, and not everyone has access to a printer. So trying to think about how to provide access for kids to things that don't necessarily require them to have a particular worksheet to do what they need to do. And if it does, how can we provide them an alternative that allows them to continue to access that?
I'm curious what the other group talked about. I didn't get to hear anything. Did you guys have any brilliant ideas or anything, questions? Anything? No.
I mean, we liked what we saw. We were just kind of comparing and contrasting like what we were doing at different schools in comparison to what was on the slides. So
okay.
It was just interesting to hear what everyone else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really fun to just to look around at the different schools and to see what people's daily or weekly postings look like, and based on the principles of expectations, what we've been asked to do or asked to emphasize. It's really important to our principal that we distinguish what is day 1, day 2, day 2, and so on. but then I didn't see that necessarily in those examples.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But it's
Yeah,
fun to kind of shop. Like, I feel like I was window shopping yesterday when I was looking at different schools to see kind of like what the options are, what's available. All
Yeah,
good stuff.
Smart to be doing, looking at other schools too and getting some ideas.
Mhm.
Be able
Well,
to pull some things.
I'm also the PSYOP lead for our building, so that was one of the suggestions that Molly Moss had, because I was asking her kind of to give me maybe like her top 3 things that she would try to prioritize in online learning, just so that my staff have something that like a kind of a screener,
Mhm.
just in the back of their mind to be thinking about. So then I was just trying to come up with other options that might be viable or useful, or address the needs of our ELLs a little bit better. Bye, Ellie.
Hi, Ellie.
Ellie.
No, that's smart to ask Molly too, to pull on those resources, or like us too. Like, don't forget, I feel like just being at home, I know you guys have your PLCs, but it can tend to feel like an island to a certain extent. I know I've gotten into a routine of like who I'm connecting with each week and who I'm not connecting with each week. So just don't forget that you have a lot of people that are able to pull things, grab things for you, and help out too. So
Well, and I really appreciated the time you guys spent on Zoom with us last time. That was really helpful in working with my students during our class meetings that we have once a week, and just being able to show them some of those features and get them a little bit more actively engaged. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just trying to like put all the pieces together and come up with a good product for the kids.
Yeah, Jackie brought up something I felt like it was important earlier, is like all this stuff we're doing right now, learning all this technology is going to help so that in the fall we can just focus on like interacting with kids, being with kids, and getting kids to interact with each other. Like, we shouldn't be reinventing the wheel, but pulling on what we've learned during this time. And I think that's huge. So that made me feel excited too, like, hey, we can do this thing in the fall if we think about it that way.
And Candace, don't worry about teaching your kinder to read. It's fine. It'll be fine.
The world needs ditch diggers too, don't worry.
Yeah, I'm going to be pulling on some of these examples too. I liked the kindergarten mystery science examples because they like have the words and they spell the words out and stuff on the screen for the kids.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of cool. So
Yeah.
feeling that for sure.
You got this.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Anything for next session that feels top of mind or interested in, or a springboard from here that you'd want to see more of?
I like what you're bringing. Surprised me because both weeks have been great.
Thanks.
So yeah.
Good job, Kelly. Kelly's been coming up with these examples and I've just been giving feedback. So she's been doing awesome with this.
Thank you. I don't want to pretend to know what you need. So is there any resources, or, because I know for me as a parent, and I'm not in the classroom, but just the amount of resources around is overwhelming. So I don't want to go there as a place. Would more examples be helpful? Something over a week, or maybe just some time to think about it, and we'll check in again before we meet again next. Or we can surprise you.
Surprise.
Jackie says surprise.
That works. Yeah, Kelly and I were saying yesterday, I'm like, I feel like teachers are tired of making decisions. Like, we just need to lay it out and be like, here's the example, here's what we would do. Do what you will with it.
Yeah.
So you guys are making so many decisions and deciding on things all day. So, and I know that can be exhausting. But we're appreciative of all you guys are doing. And when you share too what you're working on and trying out new things, I think, and I know it sounds cheesy, but I do think that this whole experience has had us try out some new things and be a little bit more brave than we've been in the past. I think that's pretty cool.
you guys think there's any possibility that the district might come up with something such as, this is the lesson for 3rd grade all across the district, and this person is responsible for recording and transmission of said lesson, and the teacher's job is just to interact with the students as coaches? I mean, I'm not suggesting that. I'm just curious if anybody has thought of that.
I'll write it down as a possibility. I haven't heard it in conversation. I would be curious about where like pacing goes into all of that across different schools, and that some schools are using slightly different tools to get to that too. So 3rd grade isn't necessarily like a universal across the district. But I think you're already doing that, and I think it could be potentially a larger like contribution of teams working together to provide tools or provide designed instruction to get at students.
Yeah, just thinking with Common Core, I mean, I realize that all the schools have different needs, but you know, essentially the standards are meant to be the same.
Yeah.
So I just wondered if, I'm not suggesting we implement that, but just wondering if there's been any conversation about that on a district level.
Anything's possible at this point, and I think the purpose of those work groups that are being formed and are going to start meeting tomorrow, like that's kind of what's being figured out in those. So
are any of you part of those?
Kelly and I are.
I'm in the K5 literacy one, or not, excuse me, the 3rd to 5.
Okay.
Oh, good. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it.
That'll be good.
Yeah.
I'm 6-8 social studies.
Okay.
I'm doing a lot of work with them this year, so.
Yeah, fantastic. Good.
And I think some really thoughtful work will come out of that. I know that there's some pretty like brisk timelines, but I'm hoping that with the collection of people in those groups that we have really thoughtful for everyone involved, for students, for families, for teachers, and thinking about what the fall could look like. Because I think that's just, it's hard to be in a system where you're trying to plan for what's a huge question mark. Like we just don't know what, the next 2 weeks, let alone the next 2 months is going to bring and how things are going to look. So I think our district is being proactive and trying to model after the state and like what could be in the fall. So we'll keep you posted about what we hear.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the things that you're doing and the time and energy and expertise you shared today. So enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully the sun decides to show up. It's cloudy over where I am at, but hopefully we can get out and enjoy some sunshine today. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.